It's time to rank every racer in Disney Speedstorm from worst to best in one definitive tier list. Now this tier list was made with the help of 10 of the best Disney Speedstorm players in the world, so shout out to all of them for making this possible, and stick around to the end of the video to hear more about them. Starting things off at the bottom of the D tier, we have Hercules. Now every single top player that I reached out to ranked Hercules in the bottom 3 of all the racers, and it's no surprise why. Hercules has some of the worst stats in the game, ranking well into the lower half for every single stat except for combat, which isn't that useful in an actual race, and his ability, although decent, is not doing him any favors whatsoever. Staying in the D tier, we have everyone's favorite purple dragon, Figment, who is probably the most underwhelming racer in the game. His stats are all painfully mediocre with no redeeming areas whatsoever, and his ability just isn't doing him any favors. The normal activation is absolutely terrible because of its super short timer, and the charged activation, while decent if you're in first place, will not let you catch up at all if you find yourself stuck towards the end of the pack. Moving up into the C tier, we have Mulan, who actually has some pretty good stats in a lot of different areas, but suffers from an extremely low top speed, and her ability does not help her cover her flaws at all. It leaves her extremely vulnerable, and it stuns opponents, which doesn't complement the trickster playstyle super well, and she has nothing to increase her top speed, meaning she can fall behind really easily. Right up next after Mulan is Donald Duck, who honestly suffers from a similar problem in Mulan, just to a higher degree, in the fact that Donald Duck generally has pretty great stats. In fact, he has the best handling in the game, but unfortunately he has the worst top speed stat, and his ability is not helping him gain top speed at all. It's a nice ability and good for the brawler class playstyle, but if Donald Duck falls behind, his top speed is just so low, it doesn't matter how well you're racing, you're not gonna catch up to people. And so he's pretty consistent in getting like in the middle of the pack, but a lot of races, especially at higher multiplayer ranks, are very focused on getting first place, and Donald Duck just struggles to do that because of his low top speed. Next up is Mowgli, who is just overall very average. All of his stats are very average, and his ability is very average. Summoning the wolves that Mowgli has is alright. It helps him when he's in the middle of the pack to either hit the people who are very far in front of him by charging it down, or just all the people around him by normal activation. But if he falls very far behind, his ability isn't going to be too much help, and if he's in first, obviously his ability is not going to do much either, making him just a very, very average racer. Continuing in the C tier, we have one of the newest racers in Disney Speedstorm, Woody. Now, there's not much I have to say about Woody that I didn't already say in my ranking of the Toy Story characters video. He has very, very poor stats, except for his top speed stat, which is actually a nice redeeming quality that he has, and his ability is overall just pretty poor. It's a nice, unique concept, but in an actual race, it isn't tremendously useful, especially when you're comparing like his charged activation to someone like Shang. It just doesn't hold up nearly as well. Right in front of Woody, we have Peep, another new Toy Story racer. Now in my ranking of the Toy Story characters, I actually put Woody ahead of Peep, but I see why the top players voted like this. Peep's stats are slightly better than Woody's, which is why she's ranked higher. Their abilities are about equal in usefulness, in my opinion. They're both just alright, and that's why they're both in the C tier. Moving things up into the B tier, we are starting it off with Goofy, who has very, very middle of the pack average stats, and his ability is essentially just a watered down version of Buzz Lightyear's, which is to say that it is decent, but it is not nearly as good as Buzz's ability, which is why he's down here in the B tier. Right in front of Goofy, we have Meg, who has a very similar problem to Donald and Mulan. She has a very, very good stats except for her top speed, which is actually extremely low, the second worst in the game, right behind Donald. The difference between Donald and Mulan, though, why Meg is up in the B tier, is because of her ability. When she uses it normally, it gives her the ability to boost ahead and get in front of people, which makes up for her lack of top speed a little bit, and her charged activation is also very good. Next up after Meg in the B tier is the man himself, Mickey Mouse. Now Mickey Mouse has pretty solid stats again, except for his top speed. This is a pretty common theme. Top speed is really important in this game, you guys. And not to mention Mickey's ability makes it pretty impossible to pull in front of people because they'll just use his little trail that he leaves behind, getting all the benefits from it, making his ability kind of useless if you're trying to pull ahead by yourself. Staying in the B tier, we have Jack Sparrow, who has very average stats, middle of the pack on most of them, ahead on top speed by a little bit, and his ability is just decent. It creates a nice aura around him that stuns people and makes him basically untouchable for a while, which is actually pretty good and pretty useful, which is why Jack Sparrow is, in the B tier. He's just an average, pretty nice racer. Up next, we have the Beast, who actually has the worst acceleration in the game, but more than makes up for it in other areas. For one, his top speed stat is absolutely incredible, and two, his ability can also be incredibly dominant under the right circumstances. Now, I'm not gonna lie, Beast takes a little bit of skill and a little bit of luck too. You need to get his ability 3 times to activate his Beast Mode ability, and when this happens, he becomes an absolute menace and can easily pull ahead into first place and stay there for the rest of the match if you play your cards right and you don't get stunned too many times, which is why Beast is up in the B tier. Rounding out the B tier, we have Shang, who has a very solid stat pool and one of the most obnoxious abilities to play against, in my opinion. When he charges down his ability at a high level, he can become immune and have his little stick swirling up in the air so nobody can hit him, and if they do touch him, they get stunned for extremely long periods of time if you can keep getting that ability, and it just makes him so obnoxious to fight against, while Shang pretty much just does his own thing and can't have anyone touch him. He can just pull ahead and not have to worry about the enemy racers at all. Starting things off in the A tier, we have Celia May. Now, Celia May has very solid stats. She's a defender and has a great dual purpose ability that you can either use to disrupt your opponents, or you can use it to just ignore them and pull ahead and do your own thing. And it just makes Celia May a very solid, very balanced racer that I enjoy playing and playing against. And yeah, she's definitely a solid A tier. Up next is Belle, who has some of the best acceleration and handling in the game and still has solid other stats to go along with that, making her just an absolute menace alone with her stats. But on top of that, her ability is very useful whether you normally activate it or charge it down. Her normal activation, I'm sure we all know, where she can turn the course into an IKEA, having furniture all over the place, and then her charged ability is very useful if she's in first to pull ahead of the pack using her little birds, which gives her a little nice speed boost. Next in the A tier is Randall, who has some of the best stats for any of the tricksters in the game, along with an ability that takes a lot of skill to use but can be really devastating if you use it properly. Collecting those scream canisters and getting the massive boost after you fill your canister up is absolutely insane if you can pull it off multiple times in a race, and it'll be sure that you win if you can pull it off. Up next is Baloo. Now, this bear has a terrible acceleration stat, but a really strong top speed stat, and that plus his charged ability can make him an absolute menace, becoming one of the fastest racers in the game if you use him right, and if you can pull ahead in the pack and get first place, it's very easy to stay there with Baloo because of his charged ability. However, it's a pretty high risk, high reward, because if you get stunned too much or you can't pull off your abilities properly, it can get really hard to use him and you can fall behind quite easily, but I think just because of his potential alone, he definitely deserves this spot up in the A tier. Staying in the A tier, we have Jessie, who I know I ranked as the best Toy Story character earlier because of her incredible stat pool, but I was proven wrong by the top players. Jessie is absolutely insane. Her stats are some of the best in the game, but unfortunately she just doesn't compare to that other Toy Story racer that is still left on this list. But that is not to say that Jessie is not good though. She is absolutely incredible. Her ability can make the track an absolute nightmare to drive on, and her stats are very strong. Rounding out the A tier, we have Elizabeth Swann, who absolutely deserves this spot. Her stats are absolutely incredible, right up there with Jessie, and her ability is also very useful. It's a little hard to get value from if you don't know what you're doing, but if you do know what you're doing, again, you can make the track a nightmare to drive on, parting the seas behind you, forcing people to go on either side of you, making it really annoying to drive around Elizabeth Swann. Not to mention, her being a defender and her stats like that definitely solidifies her at the top of the A tier. Starting us off in the S tier is none other than Buzz Lightyear. Now I thought I had overrated this racer in my Toy Story ranking video, but I realized I was so wrong. Nearly every single top player agreed to put him in the top 3, many even claiming that he was the best racer in the game, and it's pretty clear why. Buzz's stats aren't great, but his crew members and ability make him an absolute menace. Charging down that rocket of Buzz's can launch him so far forward, it makes him absolutely devastating to play against, and if you have the right crew members, it can easily cover up any weaknesses that Buzz might have, which is pretty much his handling. His handling is where he really doesn't shine, but yeah, Buzz definitely deserves the spot in the S tier. His charged ability is so good. Taking the silver medal is Mike Wazowski. Now I know a lot of people are going to be shocked that he's not the number 1 racer, but unfortunately I think the nerfs got to him just a little bit. His door ability is still super OP and by far the best ability in the game in my opinion, and his stats are very strong. They're incredible in almost every aspect, and yeah, Mike Wazowski, he's an absolute menace to play against still. Definitely keep investing your resources into him. His doors are just unstoppable. Taking the number 1 slot in the S tier is none other than Sully, the best racer in Disney Speedstorm. Now, Sully has gotten so many buffs since I made my last tier list, and it has really shown. He went from being one of the worst racers in the game to the best. His ability is absolutely incredible now. It launches racers backwards, which is shockingly effective, not to mention it fully charges his boost bar whether you hit someone or not, which is absolutely crazy to think about, and it makes him an absolute menace. Plus the brawler class got buffs, which is the class that Sully is in. Now he can maintain his boost for nearly the whole game just by using his ability, hitting people, bashing into them. It will fully charge his boost bar no matter what, and that is why Sully is the best racer in Disney Speedstorm. That is the definitive tier list for Season 2 of Disney Speedstorm. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Disney Speedstorm content. And again, another huge shout out to all the top players who helped me create this list. Please go follow them on all their social medias. The links are in the description. A lot of them make a lot of great Disney Speedstorm content, and if you need to learn a thing or two, they are all amazing at the game. So again, please go follow them. But that's all for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out.